You know, all those numbers that surround us every single day, we're talking stock prices, street addresses, the populations of cities. It turns out they're not as random as you think. Nope. They follow a secret, hidden pattern. And today, we're going to crack that code.
All right, let's start with a little thought experiment. Just imagine for a second you grab a newspaper, or really any big collection of real-world data, and you list out every single number you find. Now, if you only look at the first digit of each of those numbers, which one, from 1 through 9, do you think is going to pop up most often?
I mean, our brains just scream for it, to be fair, right? We expect this perfectly even split. Each digit, 1 through 9, should have about an 11% shot at showing up. It just feels logical. That's what our intuition tells us. Randomness should be, well, random.
Yeah, well, the real world of numbers doesn't really play by those rules. The truth is actually way more lopsided and, honestly, a lot more fascinating.
Get this. The number 1 appears as the leading digit an absolutely incredible 30.1% of the time. That's right, nearly a third of all naturally occurring numbers start with a 1. It's not just a little more common, it's dominant, by a huge margin.
So this bizarre phenomenon actually has a name. It's called Benford's Law. And it's basically this observation that in these huge, messy sets of real-world data, the number 1 is going to be the first digit about 30% of the time, the number 2 about 18% of the time, and that pattern keeps declining all the way down to the number 9, which shows up less than 5% of the time.
And look, this is not just some abstract theory. Take a look at this. This is data from over 19,000 U.S. city populations. See the bars? That's the actual frequency of the first 2 digits. And that dotted line? That's what Benford's Law predicts. It's an almost perfect match. You're seeing the law in action, right there.
So where did this wild idea even come from? Well, it started with a really simple, almost brilliant observation. Back in the 1930s, a physicist named Frank Benford noticed that the first few pages of his logarithm tables, the ones for numbers starting with a 1, were way more worn out and dirty than the pages at the back. He realized, hey, people must be looking up numbers that start with a 1 way more often.
So after that observation, Benford published his findings in 1938, but the idea just kind of sat there for decades. It was this obscure little curiosity. Then, in 1989, a PhD student named Mark Negrini had a light bulb moment and realized its incredible potential for finding fraud. A Wall Street Journal article in 1995 finally pushed it into the mainstream, and today, it's a go-to tool for auditors and fraud detectors all over the world.
But why does this even happen? The simplest way to think about it is growth. Okay, so for a number to go from, say, 100 to 200, it has to double. That's a 100% increase, and that whole time, its first digit is a 1. But to go from 900 to 1,000, it only needs to grow by about 11%. So numbers just naturally spend way more time starting with a small digit as they grow.
And this is where the story pivots from a cool math curiosity to a powerful detective tool. You see, as fraud expert Dr. Joseph Wells points out, people who are committing fraud, they have to make up numbers. And it turns out we humans are just really, really bad at faking randomness in a way that looks natural.
So this leads to the million-dollar question, right? If all this real organic data has this built-in predictable pattern, what happens when someone fakes a set of numbers, like say on their expense reports or a bunch of fake invoices? Well, they just don't follow the pattern.
The process is actually amazingly straightforward. An auditor just takes a huge data set, like thousands of company payments, and they count up the frequency of all the first digits. Then they plot that data against what Benford's Law says it should look like. Any big difference, any weird spike or dip, that becomes an immediate red flag to go investigate.
And the difference is it's stark. Natural data hugs that Benford's curve really closely. But when people invent numbers, we try to make them look random, which to our brains means spreading them out evenly. So we tend to use way too many middle digits, like 5s, 6s, and 7s, and not nearly enough 1s. This creates a pattern that just screams unnatural. It's basically the digital fingerprint of a lie.
And what's really amazing is that while its most famous use is catching fraud, this law is everywhere. It shows up in stock market data, the areas of rivers, atomic weights, death rates, even street addresses and physical constants. It's this fundamental property of our world, a pattern woven right into the fabric of data that spans all kinds of different scales.
So what started as just a casual observation about some dirty pages in a book has become one of the most elegant and powerful tools we have for checking if data is real. It's just a beautiful reminder that underneath all the apparent chaos of the world, there's often this hidden, predictable, and incredibly useful order.
Benford's law really proves that even when we're not looking for them, these profound patterns are all around us. And it kind of makes you wonder, if numbers are telling this incredible story, what other truths are just out there, waiting to be discovered, hidden in the data of our daily lives?